geeks and geekettes and comic book aficionados everywhere. This is Chuck Dixon bringing you another episode of Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me questions about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. Let's not waste any time. Alan Barevi, or Baribi. You told me I pronounced your name right once. Now I forgot how. I think it's Alan Baribi. I'm sure it's Alan. Anyway, I have made it no secret that I am a huge fan of Batgirl, Cassandra Cain Batgirl. I cut out part of this question to make it fit on the screen. And how I feel she would be the best and most logical Robin. I was curious about your thoughts on her and where you would like to see her go in the future. And knowing what a huge manga fan you are, did you consciously or unconsciously make her manga-esque, as I can totally see her in a manga book? Well, Cassandra Cain is not my creation. She was created jointly by Scott Peterson and Kelly Puckett. Basically brought in to replace Barbara Gordon as Batgirl, so there would be a Batgirl in the comic. And it was all Scott and Kelly's idea. Every once in a while, though, they would run into deadline problems because although I feel that Kelly Puckett, Scott Peterson as well, but Kelly Puckett is one of the best writers ever to write comics. Seriously. He's in my top 5 guys who've ever written comics. Not to take anything away from Mr. Peterson, also an awesome writer. But Kelly, specifically talking about Kelly, he had deadline problems. His stories were always ingenious and well plotted out and super entertaining. He could write stories that would make me go, why didn't I think of that? And he would find aspects and facets in these characters that no one else could see. And but you can't rush genius. So he would have deadline problems, and every once in a while I would be brought on board to help out because they say, we're running into a little bit of a problem here, and could you write a Batgirl story in a week? Like, boop, okay, I'll do it. I love the series, and I loved every chance I got to write it. But I just want to correct the record that I didn't create this awesome character. And yeah, I feel she'd be a perfect Robin because she's definitely as dour and grim and as driven as Batman, more so than any other person who's ever taken the Robin role. She would make an absolutely perfect Robin. And, I don't know if they've ever thought of that or if that's ever even happened. Now I'm going to get a million comments. Yeah, detective issues, blah, blah, through blah, blah. She was Batgirl. She was Robin for a while. Yeah, I don't know because I don't follow current continuity, and by current continuity I mean anything post 2004. So that's current for you. But yeah, but thank you. Yeah, I think she. There's obviously some manga influences there, particularly in the art. The art on that book was top drawer all the time. Glenn Davis, I was fascinated by your stories about the demise of various comic book companies. I've long been curious what caused the collapse of Harvey Comics. What do you think of their shared universe? Well, if you don't know Harvey, you're probably most familiar with Casper the Ghost. Harvey was kind of a strange publisher. They had a different history than a lot of the other comic book publishers. And for the most part, they licensed stuff. In the early days of Harvey Comics, they reprinted, for the most part, comic strip stuff, and then but they followed every trend. I mean, they had horror comics when they were popular in the 50s. They had war comics, Black Cat, which Harvey published for a long time, which I consider one of the best of the Golden Age characters, created by Lee Elias. Had a long run, and really the only successful foray that they made into any kind of superheroes. Although Black Cat was not a superhero, she was a masked vigilante character. But there's not a lot of that in Harvey's history. But for 60s comic fans, they were the first people to make us aware of the Spirit in 2 25-cent collections, big fat collections of reprints and new material by Will Eisner in these two Spirit collections. It's the first time I ever ran into the character. And so they had kind of a weird past. They kept trying different things, getting into adventure comics and science fiction comics, and for the most part they failed. But they were tied into, and I'm not sure how this happened or what the deal was, but they were tied into cartoons, particularly with Casper the Friendly Ghost. And so from that, they sort of found their niche, which was comics, Bigfoot humor comics for little kids. And they had a cast of characters like Little Lotta. I think you get the joke here. Little Dot. A girl who liked dots. Yeah, these are kind of simplistic. Baby Huey, who was a big, overgrown, apparently mentally slow duck. And this was Harvey's thing. These one note kind of one gag characters. Richie Rich, he was really rich. And the stories are all about how rich he was. And Wendy the Witch, she was, this little witch who went around, making trouble. Casper, of course, we all know Casper the Friendly Ghost, one of the most pathetic, tragic, just sad characters in comics, especially when you think about the fact that, he was, he died as a child. It's kind of weird. And Hot Stuff, who was a demon, who apparently was not house trained, potty trained. This was their cast of characters. And for the most part, when I was a kid, other kids read them. I didn't really read them. I read them because they were around. They were sitting at the barber shop or, on the coffee table at a friend's house, and I'd take a look at them, but they never engaged me. And I think there's a really good reason for that. Occasionally, because I like service comedies, I was tricked into buying some Sad Sack comics. Sad Sack was a creation of George Brown. And it was funny in its day when they were spot cartoons in, I think, an Army publication. But the comics were not all that good. And that's, for me, is the problem with Harvey comics in general. They're well crafted from an art standpoint. They always look good. They always look very attractive, well drawn. But the stories were aimed at children, and particularly children who weren't very demanding of their entertainment. As I said, the characters were mostly one note. Casper the Friendly Ghost was lonely and afraid all the time. Richie Rich was just incredibly wealthy and never really seemed to do anything with the money except occasionally, make a few people happy. He didn't seem to have any game plan. His riches were never really in danger of being lost like Uncle Scrooge's. Hot Stuff, I never got Hot Stuff. I didn't understand what the deal with Hot Stuff was. But the other characters, Little Lotta, Little Dot, I can't remember anything about them because they're forgettable characters. The stories are forgettable, which is sad because they had very talented art crews working on these things. From a strictly craft point of view of, panel composition and storytelling and things like that, these are very attractive comics, and they were well done from that aspect. Unfortunately, the writers seem to think that children were idiots who didn't need, and I guess there were enough kids around who, little kids who thought this stuff was engaging enough that, the company stayed around for a long time into the 70s, printing this stuff. There's just acres and acres and piles of it. Dark Horse Comics printed some collections of Harvey stuff, which, I bought a couple just because, I wanted to check them out. And I was quickly bored. So there was nothing there. And I don't mind reading books, comic books done for kids, as we will see later when I review an excellent series of comic books from this same period aimed at children. Now, Harvey, Marvel tried to buy Harvey, and they were going to take the Harvey characters under their wing and print them, but that it didn't work out. And apparently lawsuits flew back and forth. And that kind of became the history of Harvey Comics, suing people. Very, very sad end to Harvey's reign. But so rather than buy Harvey Comics, because the deal fell through, Marvel hired away Sid Jacobson, who was editor in chief at Harvey, and had him create a whole new raft of characters aimed at children. And once again, this stuff's not real engaging. These are imitations of what Harvey was doing. Imitations so close that Harvey sued over the creation of Royal Roy because they said it was way too close to Richie Rich. That may well be, but it was just as tedious as Richie Rich. Little secret, I tried to get on board Star Comics and sent some pitches into Sid Jacobson, and he wasn't a real nice guy. And the writers had to draw layouts. They had to work old school, where you had to draw the layouts and write the word balloons on the pages. And I don't like working that way. I'm at best a fair to midland cartoonist, and I don't want to have to draw page layouts. I just wanted to write it. And but he told me that I was unprofessional and would never reach the level to work in the comic book business. So basically, don't quit your day job, kid. So that was Sid Jacobson. This line kind of folded after a while because nobody cared. For the same reason Harvey went out of business, there just wasn't an audience for this kind of comic anymore. I can't quite figure out who the audience for it was. And as I said, the company fell into a series of lawsuits, became famous for suing people, including each other. Two brothers ended up as heirs to the company. It was a privately held company, and they ended up suing each other. And then most ridiculously, they sued the producers of Ghostbusters because they said that the Ghostbusters logo ghost was stolen from Fatty, one of the ghosts from Casper the Friendly Ghost, which is quite a stretch. And also, fat ghosts were kind of around before the creation of the so cleverly named Fatty Ghost. So that's my pinhead's view of the history of Harvey Comics. I didn't do a whole lot of research on this. Basically, this is just my view as a fan and reader. But I did read up on the fascinating series of legal actions the company took against everybody in sight and each other, and kind of just kind of vanished into the ether. I guess somebody owns the rights to those characters, but I don't know why anybody would bother to do anything with them at this point. Sorry if you're a big Harvey Comics fan. Sorry. I shouldn't step on fan toes, but that's my take. Ian Reed. I have found as of late that I have my brain. Wait a minute. I have found as of late I have my brain bucket is overflowing with ideas, and have thought about putting pen to paper to get them out of the system, so to speak. With that in mind, I was wondering if there are any good resources for an amateur scribe so that I can do my best to avoid producing a flaming pile of garbage. Well, every writer has two tools that are absolutely essential to writing, and they are ignorance and confidence. Don't worry about whether or not your story is the best story ever written, or the greatest American novel, or whatever. It's your idea, and just get to it. Just write the story down. And you never know if it's good or bad till it reaches an audience. And I'm going to tell you something. This is something for anybody who wants to write. You're going to reach a point in your writing, whether it's a comic, a novel, a screenplay, or whatever, where you just convince yourself that what you're writing is pure tripe. It's just crap. Nobody's going to like this. This is boring and awful. You're going to reach that point. Every writer does on every project. Trust me, I do it to this day. But what you have to remember is this, first of all, this was your idea. So it's not new to you anymore. It doesn't seem all bright and shiny because you thought about it. You thought about it enough to start writing it. But it's still bright and shiny to people who have never heard it before, especially since it's going to come at them fully realized by you. Your job is to fully realize that idea and see that, that shiny little pebble becomes a diamond. But you are going to reach a point, particularly in novel writing, where you're in that horrible middle passage where it just seems like this is is crap. Nobody's going to want this. And that's when you have to keep soldiering on because, it's not fresh to you anymore. That's just the way it is. You're not consuming the story, you're creating the story. And it's all new from you. So that's something to remember. And the other important thing is you don't write, you rewrite. So what you write today may be, just laying there on the page. Well, that's when you go in, you punch it up, you rewrite it. You take a few days off or a few months off if you have to and revisit the work. I do this all the time, particularly in prose writing, not so much in comics writing, because comic writing has kind of been my DNA, but prose writing is a learned skill. And I'll walk away. If a novel's not working, I'll walk away from it for a while and then come back, maybe 6 months later. And I can see everything I did wrong. It's like if you've ever done a crossword puzzle and you can't figure out what's a 4-letter word for, whatever, number 5 down. You can't for the life of you figure out what that 4-letter word is. You go away for a couple of hours, come back, and all of a sudden you knew it. I don't know how that works. I don't know how the brain works, but that happens, and that happens in writing as well. I mean, I will literally sit down with a piece of prose I wrote 6 months before, and look at it and go, Mike, I didn't even know I knew that word. Where did I come up with this phrase? This is pretty good, or this sucks, and there's a better way to say it. So you don't write, you rewrite. And like I said, ignorance and confidence, they are your best friends. And you need to get it down and get it out there and let people see it. And that's the only way that's the only way to write is to do it. And the other thing I'll tell you is read criticism as well. Not necessarily of your own work, but of other, read criticisms of movies or novels that you're familiar with. And it gives you a different perspective on that movie or novel. And makes you start thinking about story structure, character development, all these tools that a writer needs. What you don't want to do, what you never want to do, is read a how-to book on writing. Don't do it, because it'll discourage you from writing. It'll make you think there's some sort of secret or some sort of magic, or maybe you read something in a how-to book and you just don't get it. Well, that thing that you don't get, you may have already intuited. Apparently, I knew how to do 3-act structure, and I thought I didn't understand 3-act structure. But I was assured by all of my editors that my stories had beginnings, middles, and ends. So don't worry about it. Don't think about it anymore. That's where ignorance comes in. Ignorance is bliss, to quote a cliche. Next question. Dan Donovan. Hey, Dan. I feel like I should know the answer to this, but I don't. What is your opinion of Tim Burton's 2 Batman movies? Like them or not, their influence on the on-screen versions of Batman ever since, with only a couple of exceptions, can't be overstated. Yes, they certainly were influential. I gotta say that I was greatly disappointed by these movies. There was a lot of hype, and within the comic book community, we were told how brilliant the first screenplay for the first movie was. Absolutely brilliant. Basically, people at DC were saying, yeah, you goofballs could never write anything as good as this. This is awesome. We were never allowed to look at it. But we were scolded and told, and just if they had rolled the screenplay up and beaten us with it, they couldn't have had more of a negative impact on us. And then I saw the movie, and I'm like, this is what they consider a masterpiece. I find the movie a problem, and I think the biggest part of the problem is Tim Burton. Tim Burton is a very talented guy when he has a good story to tell. He's one of the best directors. When he has a good screenplay, this guy knows how to bring it all out and put it on screen. I don't think he did not have a good screenplay here. There's not enough action. It's herky-jerky pacing. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. And there's just general technical problems with both of these films that you just can't overcome. And one of the biggest problems is Batman is such a passive character in the movie. I think part of this was due to costuming problems. He just couldn't move around a lot. He couldn't even turn his head. So he, especially in Batman Returns, he literally stands around while other people take action. If I'm not mistaken, in Batman Returns, the villains finish each other off for the most part. And in the first film, Joker just falls off a building, so he might have fallen off that building anyway. Uh, so he's kind of a pointless character in his own movie. Although I really like Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne. I think he was terrific Bruce Wayne. He really pulled it off. And I think he would have been a good Batman if he was given a suit that he and his stunt doubles could have moved around in a little easier. I mean, if you look at the stills here that I've presented, and these are the stills, he's standing around glaring at you, and that's about the best they could do. There's really no pictures of him in motion. Just weird. And the biggest disappointment for me is that this movie was made, in a period where we had some great action films. This was an era where, in the years and months leading up to the release of this movie, we had some of the greatest action classics ever made. Die Hard, came out months before. The second of the Indiana Jones movies. I mean, that franchise was rolling along, just a great action story. RoboCop, almost comic book related, comic booky type stuff by an auteur director, but it's loaded with action. The Lethal Weapon series from the same studio as the Batman movie sort of raised the bar for police action thrillers and the classic sci-fi action thriller Predator. So audiences were, maybe not audiences because the Batman movies made a ton of money. But myself, I was hoping for a Batman movie in the vein of these movies, big ba-boom action and set in a world that I could recognize. But, instead I get, Jack Nicholson dancing to Prince music, and it didn't thrill me. I just feel like they dropped the ball. I don't know what the focus of this was. Obviously, it was not to make an action film, which Batman has to be. Batman doesn't even really act as a detective in this movie at all. He's just kind of reacting to everything the Joker does. And I just, did not thrill me. And I will say it again, and I've said it many times before, the best Batman movie ever made was Die Hard 3. Because it's got all the elements of a great Batman story and tons of action. And I wish they would make a Batman movie like Die Hard 3. Just come up with a bad guy. He's driven by towards some evil goal. He's going to make it. And his foil is Batman. And he's going to do everything he can to, run Batman around in circles while he commits his evil, nefarious deeds. And that's what happens in Die Hard 3, with lots of explosions, car chases, gunfights, fistfights, and all the rest. The kind of things you really want in a story about the Dark Knight. John Valeris, I hope I didn't murder your last name. Do you ever plan to publish the final Winter World chapter, Winter War, as a comic or novel? Maybe with Zaffino Jr. as penciler. He recently drew some great Conan comics from Marvel. I want to revisit Winter World, and I may have an opportunity to do that in the future. It is a property that I own in conjunction with the Zaffino heirs, Gerardo being the son of Jorge Zaffino. So I want to revisit this world. I want to do Winter War. I was leading up to it in the IDW series, but the sales were too low to get there. But I have, some opportunities now that would make it easier to raise funds and give us a brand new venue for these stories. And I do plan on someday, continuing and completing this saga. And I got to agree with you. Gerardo is a fantastic artist. With his genetics, he couldn't help but be. But he's really, really come along. His dad would be so proud of his level of talent. Just very, very good stuff, as you pointed out. Ivan Aguila, do you have a most enthusiastic reader? A person who wants to read your work before it's actually printed, or keeps asking to see the pencil artwork or so. Now, I really don't have anybody like that. And this is kind of going to come up again in, I believe, your next question. I don't really have anybody like that. Who's the only person that I have close to that is Michael Hutchison, who is my nitpicker in chief. He's the guy who reads my novels first, because he can find typos like nobody's business. He is the predator for typos, and he's working now reading my second Conan novel. So he volunteers to do it, and apparently likes doing it. It's hard to get people to read your work, believe it or not, for criticism's sake. And I don't burden people with reading stuff, but Hutch volunteered. He raised his hand, and apparently enjoys the task. But yeah, I don't really have anybody like that. There's nobody in my family saying, "Oh, what's going to happen next?" So there you go. Hey, it's an Evam Twins, man. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any funny stories with your kids and their friends when they were teenagers? I mean, when they really knew what your job actually was. It's kind of weird. I mean, I guess if you grow up with someone, like if your dad's a brain surgeon, it's like, oh, my dad's a brain surgeon. My dad drives a truck, and my dad's an airline pilot. That's just what it is when you're a kid. I remember I was that way about my dad. It's just, it's just my dad is like a mechanical genius. Yeah, that's just who he is. And that all seems normal. I don't really have any funny stories about it. My kids enjoyed having lots of free comics around the house. And they picked and chose, what they wanted to read. Well, it wasn't always necessarily my stuff. Because, the comps would come from Marvel, DC, Eclipse, whoever I was working for at the time. You get these big old boxes of comp comics. So there were always tons of them around. And, they showed an interest. I think they were more, I think they liked the idea that I was at home all the time. I worked at home until they did get to a point where they were pestering me. And I got an outside office. They got to that age. And I got an outside office because I shouldn't say we, my wife homeschooled. So I got an outside office just to get some work done. But for the most part, I was around all the time. And I think they liked having a dad who was creative, and who was hip to stuff they were watching. I watched SpongeBob with them. I was interested in a lot of stuff they were interested in, and also exposed them to a lot of the entertainment that I liked. And so, to this day, we still have these, what I feel are great conversations about what's going on in the entertainment business, or a movie or TV show that, we both like or don't like, so there's some lively, spirited conversations there. And they're both, my oldest is professionally interested in the entertainment field, and my youngest basically follows a number of things avidly. So yeah, but I don't have any, and I mean, all their friends are aware of what I do, but it's never come up that anybody's like super impressed. I'm just that weird dad who's home all the time. Okay, Paul Riley. Hey, Chuck, I received a mail today regarding Spin Rack, an email, I think he means, regarding Spin Rack. How will this be different from ArcTunes? If I'm in the middle of reading something currently on ArcTunes, such as Alt Hero Q, will it be removed? No, Spin Rack will have no effect on ArcTunes. ArcTunes will continue on. My work at ArcTunes will continue on. The only connection between ArcTunes and Spin Rack is that ArcTunes provides me with a venue to create new content, which will stay on ArcTunes, but some of it will be utilized at Spin Rack. Now, what is Spin Rack? We've done a couple of videos at Graham Nolan's YouTube channel, and we're getting ready to do one on my channel, I'll be doing my first live stream about this very topic. And what Spin Rack is, we're calling it Comics 3.0. It's moving comics into a new realm, moving comics into the digital, the virtual. Spin Rack is me and Graham Nolan. That's important to remember that this company, and we are incorporated, this company is creator-driven, creator-owned. Graham and I are not licensing our intellectual property to Spin Rack. Graham and I are Spin Rack, along with 4 other extremely talented individuals in the area of gaming, tech, entertainment, finance, all the rest of it. These people are aces. They really know their stuff. Anytime we have a Zoom meeting, trust me, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. These are extremely skilled people with a great track record for startup companies and things like that. And that's what Spin Rack is. It's a startup company. And it will take Graham and my creations and it will adapt them into games, into the metaverse, into virtual reality environments, digital comics, merchandise, stuff you can actually see and touch and feel. And all of this, it'll be a major venue for a lot of my IP and a lot of Graham's IP. And, Graham has his own Nolanverse with Monster Island, things like that. We're going to be launching with, Joe Frankenstein, My Sister Suprema, and Law Dog. And you can already go to SpinRack.io and you can sign up for more information, and you'll get a neat new wallpaper, Joe Frankenstein wallpaper for your phone. That's our gift to you. You can also join us on Facebook, Instagram, just about any social media venue you can think of. You can find Spin Rack, and at SpinRack.io, SpinRack.io. There's a sign up sheet as well as more information on the company. And it's still early days for us, but we're building this and working very hard to create a brand new comics venue, the next step in the evolution of comics. And what I want to assure you, and a lot of readers are concerned about this, we are not abandoning print comics. We're not walking away. I still like print comics. I still like a comic or a graphic novel I can hold in my hands. So we're not walking away from that. And in fact, this is going to allow us to create more print material. We're going to be creating a lot more comics in digital and print for the Spin Rack venue. And I encourage you to go check it out. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just about any social media venue you can think of. You can find Spin Rack there. And there will be more in the future. And we're looking to launch our first mobile game in a very short while. And we're creating a series of mobile games that will feature characters created by Graham and myself. And all of that will be to build toward a 3D multiplayer fighting game where you can combine, mix, and match characters from all over the Nolanverse and Dixonverse here at Spin Rack. So we're very excited. It's very cool. I've gotten to meet some extraordinarily talented people in fields outside my own. And we're hyped. We are really, really psyched for this. Okay, what's your reading? People are always curious. Chuck, what are you reading? What are you reading? What recent comics are you reading? Well, nothing recent. I don't read recent comics. So I just finished this Little Abner collection from 1945, 1946. And it's classic Al Cap stuff. This volume features the almost 6-month-long saga of Lena the Hyena, which at the time was very, very famous. And Lena the Hyena is the most unmarriageable single girl in the world. And she's not pictured in the strip because the newspaper editors decided it was too offensive to see the face of Lena the Hyena. And later in the series, they had a contest for artists to draw what Lena the Hyena might look like. And Basil Wolverton famously won that contest with his depiction of Lena the hyena. And as I showed here earlier, out of order, it even inspired a song. This series of strips. But for me, the highlight of the book is the Sunday strips at the end, in which the Dog Patch, the town where Little Abner and his hillbilly clan live, they received newspapers for the first time in 1933, and this is 1946, and they haven't known for 33 years, or for however many years it was since 1933. They don't know what's going on in the world. And so they're catching up on the news, and they learn about Hitler, who Little Abner says is an amusing little varmint. They learn about Hitler and the horrors of the war to come, and not really thinking that these newspapers are a decade old, go running off to their relatives in England to warn them of the dangers of Adolf Hitler. And of course, the story takes place a year after World War II ended. So there's the humor, but it's a funny sequence. Now, another thing I've been reading, for some reason, I don't know why, I got an itch to read some Dennis the Menace comics from when I was a kid. And particularly the ones I remember most, which was the Dennis the Menace Vacation Specials, which came out every summer for years and years and years. And they always featured a 100-page issue that would tell basically a graphic novel about where the Mitchells went on vacation that year. And so I got a hold of a bunch of these relatively cheaply on eBay and read them. Again, I don't know why, but I had an itch to read these and see if what I remembered of them as a kid was true. And for the most part, it was. These were, unlike the Harvey comics, these were comics crafted to be read by children based on the incredibly popular Dennis the Menace newspaper feature, the spot cartoons by Hank Ketchum, which I can't overemphasize how popular they were in the 50s, mid 50s to early 60s. And the comics books were based on them. And rather than license the characters to the comic book publisher, Hank Ketchum packaged the comics. He hired he hired writers and cartoonists, Al Wiseman and Owen Fitzgerald most prominently, who could ape his style, and they did so perfectly, and create brand new Dennis the Menace adventures. And like Carl Barks and like Little Lulu by John Stanley, these comics did not pander to children. They're intelligently written, well crafted, in a lot of cases very funny. Never as funny as the newspaper feature, especially in its early years. The newspaper feature in its early years is hysterical because Dennis he's really an obnoxious brat, sometimes mean, always selfish. And the comics kind of sweetened him a little bit over the years. But in these early vacation specials, he is the little monster that he was in the newspaper strips. In later years, they kind of morphed Dennis into a character who, he didn't mean to do the things he was doing. But early adventures, yeah, he was quite the sociopath, which is the source of most of the humor. And again, the stories are formulaic. It's Dennis arriving in new environments, Hollywood, Hawaii, Mexico, wherever, with his family. And in each story, chaos ensues. Horrible things happen because of Dennis's, ignorance or selfishness or whatever. And of course, Dennis never pays the price for any of these things because that's just the way it goes. But like I said, the stories are the cartooning is terrific in all of these. The writing is sharp. They are funny stories. And they're also slyly educational. When I was a kid reading about Dennis in Hawaii and Dennis in Mexico, places I thought I would never visit, I learned a lot about those locations because he would actually Ketchum would send his writer and artist to the locations the Mitchells were to visit and have them draw from real life. And so you got to see things and learn about things without ever really knowing you were learning anything. because you were more interested in, what's going to happen to Dennis at the La Brea tar pits. I mean, that's going to be good. So, uh, but like I said, unlike the Harvey comics, these things were well done, and I'm reading them as an adult, and I remembered a lot of these stories. I was just astonished at the details I remembered reading these back when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I remembered all these details, and I was like, I knew where the stories were going. I remembered particular gags and stuff like that. But, I was just impressed by how well put together these comics were. And they were, Dennis the Menace comics were consistently well produced throughout the life of the comic, which was all the way up into the 70s, until they were eventually licensed by Marvel. And for a short while, Dennis the Menace was published by Marvel Comics. But, they're gone now. But recently, Paper Cuts did 3 excellent hardcover collections of some of the best of the Dennis the Menace adventures, including Dennis the Menace Goes to Hawaii, which, for my money, is a comic book classic. It's just well realized, fun, funny stories that don't treat kids like drooling idiots. BrunoBookstore@gmail.com. If you have questions, suggestions, whatever, this is the most direct way to get a hold of me. Yeah, I check out the comments. I read all the comments in the videos below, but sometimes I'll forget and miss a question that's posted there. So if you want to get your question here and you want to be absolutely 100% certain that I've read your question, go to BrunoBookstore@gmail.com. And now I want to talk to you about a project that I sort of hinted at and promised to tell you more, and now I can tell you all about it. It's Rambo First Kill. Yeah. You know Rambo. We all know Rambo. John Rambo. He's the iconic character played by Sylvester Stallone in 5 movies now. And this is a new project, a new graphic novel called Rambo First Kill. It's from Splatto Comics. That's Richard C. Meyer. And it's a graphic novel written it's plotted by myself and Sylvester Stallone, who insists I call him Sly, and scripted by me. And it's all the stuff you'd want to see in a Rambo story. Tons and tons of action. We all know Rambo. But we don't know this part of the story, which is his first tour in Vietnam. And we take him, from his being a teenager in Arizona, show his enlistment. This is pretty much Rambo's origin story. He gets in trouble with the law, unintentionally. Is offered the chance of either enlisting in the army or going to juvenile. And so he chooses to join the army. And this is his first year, his year 1 in Vietnam. And the book, as you can see, the artwork is stunning. Like I said, the story's by myself and Sly, script by me. We have art by Renzo Rodriguez, Butch Geis, Matt Barr, Kenneth Lowe, and Aaron Affleck. And as a bonus, if you go to the Indiegogo, and this is an Indiegogo thing, but it's available on demand, you can sign up for a bonus by Will Jordan, probably more well known to you as The Critical Drinker. And he's written his own 15-page story, side story of Major Troutman, with artwork by Kenneth Lowe. The artwork, all of the line art is completed. Most of it has been colored. It's still at the colorist. Once the coloring is done, it will go to the printer. This isn't a project you're going to have to wait years to see. It will be fulfilled in the near future. We're just waiting for the coloring to be done, and that's moving apace. And then it'll go to the printer, and then it'll be in your hands. And it's a 64-page graphic novel, and we plan on doing more of them. We plan on doing at least 3 of these, showing John Rambo's entire tour in Vietnam. Now, the plot is by me and Sly, but the script is by me, and a lot of the things that happen in this story are things told to me by veterans. I was a long time on the book comic The Nom at Marvel, and during that time on that comic, I talked to a lot of Vietnam veterans to make sure I got it right, to get details right, to find, basically hear their stories, try to present them in comic form. And there were any number of these stories which would not have passed the comics code for one reason or another. And a lot of that material that I was told firsthand by Vietnam veterans who were in country in the period in which this graphic novel takes place, a lot of that material inspired what you'll see in this graphic novel. So this is a real deal, balls to the wall war story, but it also shows the character arc of John Rambo and how he eventually would become the man that we know and love, who sweated and grunted and stabbed and shot his way through 5 of the greatest action films ever made. So you can go to Indiegogo right now, and like I said, it's an on-demand book. The original campaign was only 72 hours, and it's over. But you can still get all the goodies and tchotchkes and all the rest of it on demand. We are fully funded. We are more than fully funded. Let me see what the number turned out to be. If I can get up there, I'm looking at the screen. Yeah, we're just shy of 90,000 now. I think this will go a lot higher as people get interested. There's been an enormous amount of enthusiasm about this project from Richard's audience, from your boy Zach's audience, as well as Critical Drinker's audience, and my audience. I saw some incredible activity on Twitter and Facebook when I announced this project. And this is the Vietnam War project that I've been promising you for months. And here it is, all set, ready for you. So go check it out. Hey, I want to thank everybody here for listening, for watching, for liking, for subscribing, for all the things you do, for helping to spread the word about this channel. Follow the links below to check out the Rambo First Kill campaign, Spin Rack, Arc Tunes, all the rest of it. And I'll see everybody down the road.